please leave?" said my mother-in-law, Catherine, coldly as soon as we learned my husband would be transferred abroad. She took the house away from me and my daughter. With nowhere else to go, I went to the park with my 2-year-old daughter, feeling lost and unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, police officers surrounded me and asked me to come to the station. Soaking wet from the rain and shivering, I followed them, only to find an unexpected person waiting for me there. My name is Emma, and I'm turning 35 this year. I met my husband Bob at work, and after a year of dating, we got married. I quit my job when we married, and 2 years ago, our daughter Lily was born. Currently, I live with Bob, Lily, and my mother-in-law, Catherine. We used to rent, but after Catherine's husband passed away and her knees started giving her trouble, we decided to buy a new apartment and live together. It made sense since it was cheaper than a house, had an elevator for Catherine's knees, and good transportation access. Bob's job requires a lot of travel, more than other employees, with trips to other states about once a week. Having a 2-year-old, I get stressed when he's away. At first, Catherine helped with childcare, but now she doesn't at all. She actually creates more work for me by leaving dirty dishes and unwashed utensils around. When I ask her to rinse them, she apologizes and promises to be careful, but it's just talk. She only rinses them when Bob is home, which I recently noticed. Catherine's behavior seems intentionally difficult. She asks if I need anything from the store and then later complains she needed something after I've already returned. Considering her bad knees, I initially wanted to help her, but my desire is fading. I thought about talking to Bob, but he's stressed from work and I didn't want to add to his burden. Catherine's behavior started soon after we moved in together, and it's been ongoing for several years. A friend suggested that Catherine might be bullying me and that I should talk to Bob. I worry that discussing it might lead to Catherine, who has no other relatives, ending up in a facility. At first, I thought enduring it was better. But one day something happened that changed my mind. I planned to drop off Lily at my parents' place. They love having her over for sleepovers. Thanks for always bringing Lily. We look forward to these visits. Why don't you stay over sometimes too? They said. I wanted to, but I was worried about leaving Catherine alone. After a brief chat, I decided to head home. I reminded myself not to spoil Lily with too many toys. When I reached the apartment, I realized I had left my keys at home. Luckily, Catherine was supposed to be inside, so I rang the intercom. No answer. Maybe she had gone out. I decided to wait outside. After 2 hours, it was dark and Catherine still hadn't returned. Finally, another resident arrived and I followed them in. Catherine rarely goes out at night, so I was sure she was home. I pressed the intercom button again. I heard the ding-dong inside, but still no response. I waited by the door and heard a faint sound from within. Catherine was definitely inside. I tried the intercom a few more times, but she didn't answer. Defeated, I stayed at a nearby motel, planning to return when Bob got back from his business trip. When Bob came back, I told him what happened. He was upset for me, but Catherine shrugged it off, claiming she hadn't heard because of her hearing. She even tried to hide a smirk. Relieved to be back inside, I grabbed my keys and went to pick up Lily from my parents' house. My parents were supportive, offering a place to stay if things got too tough. Their comforting words brought tears to my eyes, but I quickly wiped them away in front of Lily and headed home. Things were calm for a while until Bob's international transfer was finalized. It wasn't just a business trip, it was a permanent move. We had just bought a place, and now this. Bob thought it would be best for Lily and me to stay in the U.S., but could I handle living with his mom? After considering the potential stress for Lily, I agreed it was best for us to stay. Bob left for Europe soon after, and despite his concern for us, He was too busy to think much about it. So life with Catherine began. As expected, things went downhill as soon as Bob left. Catherine's attitude changed dramatically. One stormy day, she dropped a bombshell. "Now that Bob's gone, wouldn't it be better if you and Lily moved out?" I was shocked. "Excuse me, what do you mean?" "Just what I said. I can't relax with strangers in the house. I'd appreciate it if you could leave right now." I couldn't believe her audacity. I had always tried to make living together comfortable and treated her as family. To her, we were just an inconvenience. I considered heading back to my parents' place, but she pushed me out the door, saying, "Why don't you just get out?" Lily and I, still dressed as we were thrown out into the rain. No matter how much I banged on the door, Catherine wouldn't come out. Lost and confused, I carried Lily to a nearby park. There was a small roof there that offered some shelter from the rain. Ideally, I would have checked into a motel or gone back to my parents' place, but I had left both my wallet and phone inside the house. Feeling helpless, I sat in the park, trying to figure out our next move. I'm not sure how much time passed in the torrential downpour. Overwhelmed by fatigue and cold, I began to doze off. It was already dark, and even though it was summer, the cold was biting. I feared we might catch a cold. As bad as things were, it seemed the only option was to walk to my parents' home, but it would be a 3-hour walk. As I was contemplating our situation, I saw 2 distant lights approaching. Given the rain, I couldn't see clearly, but the lights belonged to 2 police officers. I thought maybe they could help. Before I could approach, one of them called out, "Are you Emma, and is this little one Lily?" I was surprised they knew my name, but weakly replied, "Yes, that's us." The officer said, "Please come to the station with us." I wondered why the police station. Urged by the officer, Lily and I got into the patrol car. We were freezing from being out in the rain for so long, but the officers had thoughtfully brought large towels. "You might need these. We've got some spare clothes back at the station for you," they said kindly. Wondering why they knew about us and why we were headed to the police station, I inquired, "How did you know where to find us?" They responded, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon fell asleep and woke up to find we had arrived at the police station. Following the officers inside, to my surprise, I saw Catherine and my uncle. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" "He was contacted by Bob," he explained. "Bob suspected I might be having issues with his mom, and since he's abroad, he wanted my uncle to keep an eye on things for him." According to my uncle, Bob had spoken to him about this issue before. He said Bob had requested him to keep an eye on things since he couldn't be there himself. It turns out Bob saw us in the rain earlier today. He was considering taking us in himself, but thought Catherine's behavior was extreme, so he reported to the police. That's why the officers knew our whereabouts and came to get us. Catherine had also been asked to come to the police station. She sat on a sofa, glaring at me, seemingly clueless about why she was there. "Why do I have to be here? I have a bad knee, you know." If Bob was here, this wouldn't be happening. Catherine was making her case. But this entire situation was a result of Bob asking my uncle for help. In discussions with the police, there was a high likelihood that the events might have legal implications. I was told to consider hiring an attorney. That seemed like an overreaction. All I did was lock the door. I didn't do anything else. Do you even realize what you've done? You threw Emma and her child out in torrential rain. That's not forgivable. My uncle backed me up, saying I was the rightful owner of the house. But Catherine insisted it was impossible, claiming Bob was the rightful owner and that it should be hers now that he's not here. Catherine was under the impression Bob owned the house, but she was wrong. Actually, my uncle, who runs a real estate business, got us a great deal on a condo. Bob had suggested putting the property under my name. At the time, I didn't care, but now I'm glad I listened to him. Following my uncle's advice, I decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer said evicting Catherine would be tough, suggesting placing her in a care facility might be the best option. I immediately called Bob to explain the situation. He hadn't expected things to escalate this much and wanted to return from Japan to discuss it properly. He was also considering placing Catherine in a facility. Despite being at the police station, Catherine casually snacked on crackers. I couldn't return home with Catherine there, so I took shelter at my parents' place until Bob returned. He would be back in a week, giving me time to figure out our next steps. If Bob wouldn't support me, divorce seemed like the only option. I regretted not seeking advice sooner. A week later, Bob returned from Europe and went to the house with Catherine, so I moved back home from my parents' place. Given the urgency, Bob could only stay for a few days. We needed to discuss our next moves. I heard some things from Emma's uncle. Is all of that true? It's all lies. I haven't done anything. Emma's plotting to evict me, Catherine stubbornly claimed. Bob, who should have been on my side, seemed to want to consider Catherine's perspective. I get it. Do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? Evidence? Of course not. Emma, do you have any evidence? To be honest, I've been so busy with work I hadn't kept an eye on things. I'm not sure who to believe. I handed Bob a voice recorder. What's this? It contains recordings of Catherine. She not only evicted me but also berated me. When Bob played it, he heard Catherine's voice saying things like, "Such a worthless wife. I wonder why he even married you." Hearing this, Catherine quickly tried to defend herself. This is taken out of context. Everyone has their moments, right? I was just frustrated at the time, but it was just once. As Catherine claimed this, a barrage of recorded verbal abuses played from the voice recorder. There were countless instances, and even some that weren't captured on the device. Bob's hand, holding the recorder, trembled with tension and anger. Meanwhile, Catherine looked guilt-ridden. "Mom, what is this about?" Bob asked, but Catherine remained silent. "If you won't answer, then I assume this is all true. If so, I need to protect Emma and Lily. You understand that, right?" I had never seen Bob angry in all the years we'd been together. Catherine, probably seeing this side of Bob for the first time, looked frightened and shrunk back, unable to say a word. Afterward, there were several discussions until Bob's return to Europe. I asserted that I could no longer live with Catherine, considering Lily's presence and not wanting a repeat of this event. I felt I wouldn't be able to handle it. Bob seemed to share my sentiment, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Sean strongly opposed the idea, complicating the discussions. "Regardless, I've decided to sell the house, so you can't stay here anymore. If you don't want the facility, you'll need to find another place," I told Catherine. "How dare you decide this on your own? I won't allow you to sell the house." Catherine resisted, but it was a tough request to accommodate. "That's because Lily and I had decided to move to Europe." Bob regretted not being more present for his family and wanted to be there for us moving forward. Although I was hesitant about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us reassured me. Besides, Lily is only 2, and it would be good for her to practice her communication skills in Europe. Selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, was the only option. If we left it as it was, Catherine would have to cover the mortgage. Considering she's on a fixed income, she doesn't have that kind of money. Given her future prospects, someone should be around to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine was adamant about not moving into a facility, so we had to forcefully place her in one. I'm sorry, but I've got to head back to Europe. Could you handle any procedures required here? Bob asked before heading back. With help from those around me, I managed to finalize Catherine's admission into the facility. The facility staff keep me updated on Catherine's condition, but it seems she's not doing well. It would be one thing if she were just down, but apparently she's been giving people there a hard time. Before heading to Europe, I visited her to see how she was doing. But she lashed out at me, asking, "What's the big idea? Why have you locked me up in this place?" She vented her frustrations on the staff, complaining about the food, the beds, and the other residents. "I'm going to lose my mind in here," she shouted. When I apologized to the staff, they were very understanding. "It's all good," one of them assured me. We see this kind of behavior often. Just leave it to us and we'll keep you in the loop. If anything comes up, we'll give you a ring, so don't worry. Despite all the harassment, I felt worried as I headed to Europe because we used to live together. Upon arriving in Paris, Bob met me at the airport and we headed to our rented apartment. They say rents in Paris are higher than in Texas, but Bob's company provides a housing allowance, so we were lucky to find a spacious and affordable place. The neighbors in our building are super friendly and kind, even though I don't speak French fluently. Yesterday, a neighbor shared some wine and cheese with me, and in return I gave them some mac and cheese. I'm gradually learning French along with my daughter, Lily. I know there's a limit to self-study, so I've also enrolled in a language school. There are many Americans there, and I've made some friends who, like me, are new to France. I'm really enjoying my life in Paris. Back in the States, I was always concerned about Catherine, which often prevented me from fully enjoying outings with friends. But here, I can indulge in leisurely lunches just the way I like. The only concern right now is Lily. She's still too young for kindergarten. Kids here usually start the year they turn 5, so I hope she picks up enough French by then. Fortunately, Lily seems to be catching on quickly. I'm thinking of getting a job once Lily starts preschool. Bob says he's okay with me staying at home, but living in Paris has made me want to explore more opportunities. Seeing how ambitious and confident people are here has ignited something within me. I've become friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe, and she hinted there might be a job for me there. That cafe is popular among both the American community and those learning English. There might be challenges ahead, but since coming to France, Bob and I have been communicating much better. I feel more confident in expressing my feelings, and I believe that no matter what happens, we'll face it as a family. Right now, I feel happier than I've ever been in my life.